In this video, we're going to talk about crediting invoices and issuing refunds. We'll talk about the differences between the two and show you some examples of how and when to use them. In part 2 of this video, we'll take a look at some reports that will show these transactions and go through the process of reconciling an outstanding credit and invoice. Let's start with crediting. There are lots of reasons you might need to credit an invoice. You may have accidentally invoiced the wrong repair order, for example. Or maybe you put calipers on a repair order, but you ended up not needing them and forgot to delete them. We'll take a look at how to handle these two examples. Later in this video, we'll see how to handle an invoice that was processed on account with no payment taken and then credited at a later time. Let's start by invoicing this repair order. Click Credit to select how and what we're going to credit. We can credit a specific dollar amount and not associate it with any particular line item, or we can choose specific line items to credit, as in the example earlier with the calipers. In this case, we'll select the line items here. We can change the quantity of the line item we're crediting if we added too many of a particular part or too much labor. But we're going to credit back both calipers in this example. We'll select the items we want to credit. Add a note, such as parts not needed. Select the credit date and method. When selecting the credit method, you can use any of these regardless of how the invoice was paid originally. We'll choose cash and click Credit. This will create a credit document which shows the items credited. In the example where we invoiced the wrong RO, again we'll click Credit, and this time we'll select All. We'll add a note so we can recall why we credited the invoice. Select the credit date, choose a payment method, and click Credit. Here, we have the credit memo that we can print if necessary. Manage Online also reopens the repair order. In the example of invoicing the wrong RO, we could just get the right one and invoice it. This one is back to RO status, and we can invoice it later. Now, let's take a look at an invoice that is paid on account or pay later, and then subsequently credited without any payments being recorded. First, we'll invoice this repair order. We'll leave the payment method blank since we're not receiving any payment at this time and click Pay Later. We can see the full amount is still due. Now we're going to credit this invoice. Since no payment has been received on this invoice, we're going to leave the payment method blank and click Credit. This is the credit notice, and this line shows the amount we credited. Invoicing a repair order and crediting an invoice with no payment methods recorded will result in both transactions remaining active. We'll see how to reconcile these two outstanding balances in part 2 of this video. Now, let's take a look at issuing a refund. The most common instance where you might issue a refund is if you recorded the wrong payment method. The difference between credit and refund is that here we're only dealing with the money, not a particular part or labor item. This is an invoice that we recorded as being paid with cash when in fact the customer paid with a check. To correct this, we'll click Refund. We'll choose the appropriate payment and click Refund. We'll say yes to this confirmation pop-up. We can see the printed invoice does not show any payments have been received. We'll use the Pay button here. The payment date defaults to the current date, but you can change it if necessary. Choose the correct payment method. The outstanding balance of the invoice is pre-populated for us. This is the default message in the details box. However, you can edit this to record the check number, for example. If you want to print a receipt of this transaction, put a check here. Please note, this is just a receipt for payment and not the invoice itself. To record the payment, we click Pay. Now we can click Print to see an updated invoice and the refunds and payments recorded here. So, that's how to issue credits and refunds on invoices and manage online. Remember, if you have to change or edit parts from an invoice or return the whole invoice back to a repair order, then crediting is the way to go. If you need to return just the funds from an invoice, then issuing a refund is the recommended choice. Be sure to watch part 2 of this video. We'll take a look at the various reports associated with these transactions and see how to reconcile any outstanding transactions.